Hello, people. Andrew here, talking about comics from a reader, collector, speculator, investor point of view from that order of importance to myself. Today I'm talking about The Question. Question was a character created by Steve Ditko in 1967 for Charlton Comics, featured in the backup feature of the 1967 issue number 1 of Blue Beetle. At the same time, Steve Ditko also created a character called Mr. A, and both of these characters followed a philosophy by Ayn Rand, who wrote Atlas Shrugged, and I believe she wrote The Fountainhead as well, called objectivism, where it sees man as the hero and the pursuit of happiness, his moral purpose. There's more to the philosophy than that, obviously, and that seems just on the surface by that alone that's a little selfish, and maybe it is. I don't know enough about it to say one way or the other. I know that Steve Ditko toned down the philosophy a bit for The Question to make him more heroic for Charlton Comics. Charlton Comics sold the rights to a number of their characters to DC Comics in 1965, or I should say 1985. That included The Question, Blue Beetle, Captain Atom, Nightshade, Judo Master, Peacemaker. So they made their way over to the DC universe. And in 1985, DC was launching an interesting, ambitious project called Crisis on Infinite Earths. It was an effort to streamline all of their alternate worlds and planes of reality into one continuity. And to do that, they had to destroy some of these other worlds. And this seemed like the opportune time to bring the Charlton characters into the DC fold. This happened in issue 6 of the series, where we got to meet Blue Beetle, The Question, Captain Atom, some of the other ones as well. This is the first time that they appeared in the DC universe, and I'm going to get back to that in a bit. So, Question made a couple of appearances in the Blue Beetle's own magazine and what have you, until he got his own book in 1987, written by Denny O'Neil and illustrated by Dennis Cowan, with most of the covers provided with the finishes by Bill Sienkiewicz. Dennis Cowan did most of the covers, and then, as I say, Bill Sienkiewicz did the finished artwork. It ran for 36 issues with 2 annuals. Right off the bat, is it worth a read? And the answer for me is yes. I do like street-level characters and heroes, probably more so than the superpowered ones, and he's about as street level as you get. He has no superpowers. He has martial arts skills, and they're better than most, but not better than all. Often not often, but enough times he will lose a fight and have to recuperate, and he gets injured and what have you. The book itself deals with the things like corruption and crime, particularly political corruption, big business corruption, crime on the streets. In essence, even though Vic Sage, who is The Question, is an investigative reporter, he's also, that sort of makes him a detective. And I heard it said that best detective stories begin with a question. So he is looking for his own place in the world, and at the same time trying to solve some of these crimes and figure out why people are doing what they're doing. A different philosophy brought here, not objectivism, but more of a Zen philosophy. And in a brief nutshell, it's a purity of mind. And that's expressed outwardly to the benefit of mankind. More heroic sort of stance, but that doesn't mean that he sometimes is a little standoffish towards situations. I found it was a good read. I liked Dennis Cowan's artwork. I thought it was very good. It was expressive. Had a little bit of sometimes of a sketchy quality to it, but I think it fit well with the book. Hub City is where all of this is taking place, and it is a city that's more corrupt than Gotham, and perhaps the most corrupt and downtrodden city in all of the DC universe. And everything is kept at pretty much at a street level. A good 36-issue run and a couple of annuals. It's a recommended read. There was a couple of interesting books that came through the series itself. This one in particular is, if I'm jumping ahead to the only one that would be really considered a speculating book in this entire run, would be the question number 17. Because there's a one page and a panel of Rorschach from The Watchmen that makes an appearance here. Not as a character, but Vic Sage is in the airport and picks up The Watchmen, a graphic novel, and reads a few panels. The interesting thing here is that Rorschach is modeled after The Question. In 1985, when Alan Moore was talking about making The Watchmen, he wanted to use a cast of characters. DC said, we have plans for these Charlton characters. So instead of using them directly, Alan Moore made variations of them. Rorschach from The Question. The Night Owl is Blue Beetle. I believe Captain Atom is, or Dr. Manhattan is Captain Atom. So it's interesting to see the two of these characters in the same book. And that's about the only one that truly has a lot of spec on it. There was a couple of guest stars in here, but again, they were at street level, urban level. This one had, and the previous one had him show up for one panel near the end as a Green Arrow makes his appearance here. And for those wanting to buy a Green Arrow collection, this would be a nice book to add to that. And again, I like the covers, mainly done with inking by Bill Sienkiewicz. One of the books that doesn't have him, but does feature a prominent character from the DC universe, is this one here with the Riddler. It was a fun story. I liked the story. The story was still good. It was illustrated by Bill Ray, but it was a good story in the whole vein of what The Question was doing leading up to this issue. 26, I believe? 26, issue 26. This is just the final issue of that series, issue number 36. As I said, it's worth a read. I like it. It's worth it for the artwork, because I like that too, and it's worth it for all the covers. The whole cost of this 36 issue run and the two annuals, well, I bought it all in dollar bins X amount of years ago. I do not know if they're still available in dollar bins. I haven't seen too many because it's an 80s book, and a lot of the dollar bins are filled in with a lot more modern stuff. But I can't imagine that it's worth, or it's going to cost you too much money to buy this collection. I would think between $50 and $75 would get you the whole run, and maybe some of the others around it, like the Question Quarterly that followed, and some other books. So, but it was a good read. As I say, it came to an end, and they decided to launch it on sort of like a quarterly basis. That's why it's the Question Quarterly. And this went for 5 issues, but by the time these were coming out, the interest had waned on The Question. Still written by Denny O'Neil, but the complete story, and they had taken Vic Sage out of Hub City for a while, and the stories were fine, but it wasn't as intense or as interesting as those from the original series. And so The Question was sort of put to bed. It got a couple of reboots and showed up in a few other places. And then there was this little series by Rick Vetch for 6 issues, which changed the nature of The Question yet again. Now he was more of a mystic shaman that walks between two worlds. He's more at place with something like the Books of Magic, working along Zatanna or even John Constantine. Any of the mystics, a far more mystical character. In this particular 6-issue series, he's in Metropolis, and he's in it. He's assisting Superman in some ways because there's a plot to kill Superman using a device that is created. It's actually a fairly decent plot, and he interrupts that and stops that from happening. It was a good 6-issue series, and it does involve Superman from time to time, but really more so about this mystic shaman character. In this particular issue is an element of Superman that is a good indication as to why I'm not really crazy about reading a Superman book. He just seems to be too all-powerful. He's already all-powerful as it is, and then this particular one, he has the ability to whisper or talk in a frequency that only the Question can hear from hundreds, if not thousands of miles away. That seemed a little extreme. That would be a little extreme if that was a character's only power, but this is added on top of everything else that Superman can do. He just so Mary Sue that I find it difficult to read a Superman story. But this was a nice 6 issues. It didn't have a lot to do with Superman, just that it was his city. Later on, I don't know what happens with all of the modern changes that happened after 2012 or whatever it was, when all of these books were rebooting and you get your Rebirth, the New 52, and they're changing origins and what have you. I've lost track. But in a book called 52 Weeks, Vic Sage dies of cancer, I believe, and hands the mantle of the Question over to Renee Montoya. And she becomes the new Question as of issue 48 in that series. And not that there was any follow-up series, I don't believe, for the Question, but she donned the mantle. I don't think she has it on anymore, or there could be 2 Questions out there. Good question. But she's still street level. Difference is that she's got some backup friends that are not super powered, but they are heroic. Batgirl and Huntress, neither one of them have any powers other than their skills. So it still keeps it at a fairly street level type of book. This one is 2 issues, part of a DC run called Convergence. I actually like the 2 issues here. And they're facing off against Two-Face. I'd be interested in reading more of Convergence, so I will keep an eye out for that in the dollar bins. And that's where we get to. So as far as collections are concerned, you're going to be looking at it for The Question, Dennis Cowan, Bill Sienkiewicz, a couple of issues, as I said, with the Green Arrow or the Riddler, if you're a fan of the Riddler, or even the new Question. Speculation, again, I'm only going back to issue number 17, which would be the first appearance, not the first appearance, but the appearance of Rorschach within the comics with the Question. An interesting combination. As far as an investment, I would put an investment on any of these books. I just, as I say, I've found them all myself in the dollar bin, and I wouldn't be surprised as collections become available that the Question will show up again in the dollar bins, and that's when you can buy the whole series from the 80s for, as I say, about $50 to $75, maybe even less. That's it for the Question. Like the character, I'd like to see more about what's happening with him, but for now, this is what I've got, and as I say, I enjoyed reading it. You might too. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you later.